You might know Star Wars as the franchise with space wizards and laser swords, and that mysterious energy that flows through all beings, known as the Force. These elements are used by rival factions, one of them known as the ever-expanding Empire that intends to impose its will on as much of the galaxy as possible. And of course, on the other side, the Rebellion, a group of folks who seek to stop that from happening. In most iterations of Star Wars, we see an active rebellion fighting the Empire in a conflict that was established long before the viewers were aware of its existence. However, in this most recent story set in the Star Wars universe, we get a perspective on the roots of that rebellion from someone who knew and cared nothing about it at first. His name? Cassian Andor. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm on the couch. All right, this is Ronald, and I am on the couch after watching Andor. Andor, created by Tony Gilroy, starring Diego Luna, Kyle Soler, Adria Arjona, Stellan Skarsgard, Fiona Shaw, Denise Gough, and Genevieve O'Reilly. And as usual, for a complete cast listing, you could click on the link in our show notes. I am not on the couch alone. I am on a digital couch, if you will, and I'm here with...
Oh, that's me. That's my cue. I'm Kelly.
Yes. I'm here with the delightful Kelly Jones. You might remember her from the Shang-Chi episode that we did last year, I believe. So she was my resident punching and kicking expert for that episode, but also has a deep knowledge of the Star Wars universe and was a big fan of Andor. So I decided to bring her in so we could talk a little bit about why she and I love the show so much. Kelly, what did you think of Andor?
Oh, okay. I loved it. And I was primed to love it as a deep Star Wars nerd. But I was wary. I actually held off on watching it for like maybe 2 or 3 weeks into its launch. I'm a huge Rogue One fan, like massive. I think my top 3 Star Wars movies are A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Rogue One. Like that's how much I liked that film. I watched The Mandalorian. I vaguely remember Baby Yoda committing genocide against a frog species, which was kind of funny. But I don't remember anything else about that. Obi-Wan was garbage. And so I was nervous. I was so nervous. But it made me fall in love with Star Wars again, all over again. And I've watched so much since Andor came out with fresh eyes, and I really appreciated that about it too.
Yeah, this is a great show. For those that don't know what it's about, Andor follows Cassian Andor, who was one of the main characters from Star Wars Rogue One, a film that came out some years ago, 2017, 2018? 2016, okay. And it tells the story about how they got the plans to actually destroy the Death Star, which is what begins A New Hope. This goes even earlier than that and kind of tells us the story of how the main character, Cassian Andor, came to be a leader in the rebellion and what kind of brings him to the events that happen in Rogue One. This is a spy thriller. This is a prison break movie. This is a action adventure, great escape. This is a heist movie. It's all of those things. It's 12 episodes, which is actually pretty long if you consider that a lot of series have been 8, 10, or sometimes even 6 episodes, even in the Disney Plus era of Star Wars. And this being 12 and to for them not to waste one episode, they did not waste one episode of this show. There's no filler. There's no, oh, they're not, no, every episode is absolutely significant, and it's a joy to watch. I watched it from the beginning because Disney Plus did something smart. They dropped 3 episodes at once, and those 3 episodes are their own arc.
Yeah, that's actually worth mentioning because it goes 1 to 3. That's an arc. And then the next 3 are an arc. And then there's another arc. And then there's a 2-parter finale. And that was genius. They had different directors for each of the arcs, which I thought was really smart.
Yeah. You could tell it was the way that I think a show should be done, i.e., they have one person who has a clear vision from beginning to end, and then you bring in the people who are the best at doing that to do the smaller parts.
That's what Disney needs to learn from this, right? Like they need to learn not that Star Wars has to be gritty all the time, right? It shouldn't be. Star Wars is profoundly goofy at its core, and that's like something that a lot of people thought was missing from Andor. So, this could be the gritty part of Star Wars. Fine. You don't need to repeat that, but you do need to trust your creators. And I mean, they found the right one in Tony Gilroy, I think.
Well, what gets me about it is I think in some levels Disney is doing to some extent what you're talking about, because if you look at the Marvel universe, Kevin Feige is like really doing a good job of bringing in directors to do pieces of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and especially I think most notably, of course, is he brings in Chloe Zhao to do Eternals, and he brings in Ryan Coogler to do Black Panther, where it's like there's pieces of this. Here are the greater parts of this whole vision we're doing, but I need you to come and refine this piece because you're the best or most notable or making noise in this like little area, and that's what we need this genre of movie to be. Even the Ant-Man films, which are a totally different look and feel, or a different feel from the rest of the movies, especially the first Ant-Man films, which is a straight comedy, or Thor Ragnarok versus the other Thor movies, except for Love and Thunder. Like they're all different in that regard, so they have to bring in the experts that are able to kind of make those visions happen. And I think that Andor proves that you can have gritty and horrible things happening in the Star Wars universe. And if you want to take us back to the cantina and do a whole cantina episode, then bring in a director and we'll do that. And they can, because it's just like the regular world where sometimes the world is gritty and horrible, and other times it's light and fun.
One thing I really appreciated was that Tony Gilroy is not, I know more about Star Wars than he does, even though he has made, one and a bit of a whole season of a Star Wars TV show. I know so much more about Star Wars than he does. He doesn't care. He's not of this universe, but he can still tell an incredible story, and he can make it fit into that world. Like a lot of other people have said, Andor feels more Star Wars than Star Wars. And I completely agree with that. Goofiness aside, and there were some goofy moments, it brings back a lot of things that are more deep than fan service ever could be. So, Cassian Andor shoots people. He shoots people first. That's what Han Solo did. He kills them. There will always be a look on his face that's like, oh, wish I didn't have to do that, but I had to. The Empire is scary again. That hasn't happened in decades. I mean, when I was growing up, you didn't root for the Empire at all. Like nobody wanted to play those guys. And then something happened. I can't even really put my finger on it. Maybe it was just like, we need to sell more toys. But now you go into Target and everything has a stormtrooper on it. We're not supposed to be stormtroopers. We're supposed to kill those guys. Finally, the Empire is scary again. You get like horrible torture scenes, as you should. You actually kind of get afraid of like one TIE fighter at a time when they're on Aldhani, which like, it's been a while since I was ever afraid of those little weird cardboard boxes. There's no Jedi, which I freaking love so much.
I think Jedi are a trump card in the Star Wars universe, i.e., like what I like about this universe is they convince me that there's not going to be one person that swoops in and saves the day. it's going to have to be a team effort. And it means if you have 7 stormtroopers, you have to have a plan to beat those 7 stormtroopers. Because if we see 7 stormtroopers and 1 Luke Skywalker, we know, oh my God, they need more stormtroopers. That's not the case in Andor. If you see 7 stormtroopers, you better have 8 to 12 people because you're going to have to kill every last one of them, and none of you have the Force on your side.
Yeah, you don't need the Force, and you also don't need like a lineage. So this is what really bothered me about the last 3 movies with like Kylo Ren and everybody. At first, it was like, oh, there's this girl from this backwater desert planet, and she's a Jedi, which is great, and she's nobody. Her parents are nobody, and I was super into it. And then, the Rian Johnson one ended, the second one, and there was a little kid, and he like was working in a casino, but he could grab the broom with the Force, and I was like, yeah, he's nobody. This is amazing. And then they trashed it. They made it garbage. She's a Palpatine. That is so stupid. And for this show to be made up of nobodies who are the fulcrum for everything that's about to happen, like Cassian Andor makes Luke Skywalker possible, and it's awesome.
Well, and awesome. I think also what it does is it allows so that I think I like that it's making the teamwork happen, but it also makes it so that I like the stakes are just different, because when it shows you the oppression of the Empire on everyone, it does show you that anyone can be a hero as long as they stand up. There is a particular scene, which I won't spoil, but I'll talk about it a little bit and you can respond without spoiling. But there's one scene in which a character gives a speech to a bunch of people and basically says, we've been asleep for a long time, and now it's time. Yeah, and now it's time to wake up and fight the Empire. And I remember when that character says that, I got chills, because the Empire in that moment is actually doing something extremely oppressive. They're setting up to be even more oppressive in the moment. What was happening in the moment, they were trying to oppress it. They were trying to oppress all of it. They were pressing it down. So like in that moment, to have someone stand up who was an ordinary person, respected in that community, but an ordinary person, and to have everyone respond the way that they did really does show that it's not all about the Force and about lightsabers. And in a lot of ways, I kind of wish that this was a discussion. Like, the only reason why we have there can only be one narrative person with the sword is because of the way that stories were told in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, which was that it takes one person. And the truth is, it takes one person to spark a revolution. Yes, that's all it takes. If the kindling is there, it only takes one brick to be thrown for everyone to, like, you know what I mean? For it to turn into a riot. But that being said, it is a team effort. And I think this show is doing a good job of saying it takes all of us. Like, it's not going to be one of you that does it. And now you think about how absurd it is that Luke Skywalker is not only the one that hits the special mark in the Death Star. It shouldn't have been him. It should have been someone else. But he's also the one that kills the emperor. Who kills the emperor in the end.
Darth Vader does, but yeah.
Well, technically Darth Vader does, but still, like,
the fact that technicality, Luke was lying on the floor being electrocuted, but yeah.
Okay. The point is, he gets to fight the final boss. Like, why is it one dude that is kind of doing all of the work?
So, yeah, I completely agree with you about the need for having an alternative storyline. I still think both storylines are important because, and I've been mulling this over and I don't quite have an answer. The show's called Andor. It's this guy's name. Well, it's the name of this guy and a couple other people, which I think matters a little bit. It's not called Cassian Andor. It's just called Andor. Yeah. So, yes. It could be about his mom. Just throwing it out there.
It's true. Technically, his last name is not his last name. So,
yeah. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say this show is named after Marva Andor, and she's actually the reason why he joins the rebellion. I firmly believe that. But it's an ensemble show. It really is. It's a show about community. It's a show about the power of standing up together and the importance of that. Even Luke Skywalker, he never could have gotten where he was without his group of friends. So I think that there are parallel tracks happening. I don't think you get one story and not the other. It's just sort of important to show, like, the only way Luke Skywalker got to be the guy that fired the torpedoes into the Death Star was because of the work of all of these other people.
I just don't think it should have been Luke Skywalker. Maybe I'm learning now that I'm anti-Skywalker.
Oh, join the club.
Yeah, I think I'm over because now when I think about those movies again and realize like, and I guess because they're building out the universe and I know other things are happening, for me to have to sit in a swamp with Luke Skywalker while he learns space karate to go fight the Emperor, I don't care about that. Show me what the Wookiees are doing. Like, show me what there's somebody else that's planning a bomb somewhere.
I got a book for you. Yes, and I would say, Luke's, I just, not to be a Skywalker apologist, but for just a second, like, dude is plucked from a home that he doesn't like, right? He's told that he's special, but then every teacher he has along the way completely lets him down, right? Obi-Wan chooses to die rather than to finish his lessons. Yoda does the same thing. He's like, I really need a nap. You're going to be fine. Go face the Emperor. He's alone. Like he's abandoned by the people who could show him the ways of the Force. He is supported by people who know nothing about the Force. But then, he does what he's supposed to do. He lives up to his standards or whatever. And then he's the last one of his kind. Like, what is he supposed to do? He has no mentors. Sometimes a Force ghost will appear and nudge him in the right direction, but they often choose not to. So, he's a bit special. He thinks of himself as being a little bit special, but he's very lonely.
Yeah. I just don't care. I just
That's fair. That's fair.
Like I guess just to bring it back to Andor, like after seeing a universe like this that exists, it only just makes me crave more opportunities to see communities together appoint their own leadership and fight the Empire. And I feel like I guess I get to a place now where it just feels so random that it's Luke. You know what I mean? It just not even that it's random. It just feels like if it could be anybody, then let it be anybody. Because I'll give you an example. There's a scene in Revenge of the Sith where as Jimmy Schmitz is trying to get away from Coruscant, I think it is. All of a sudden, a youngling jumps in and starts defending him and beating up all these people, and we don't even get a name for that youngling. And I feel like that's what I think the Jedi should be. The Jedi should be a bunch of different people doing things at the time they need to do them, and across the universe, that is the case. But because they decided to focus in on one dude with a bowl haircut, Mark Hamill, since they decided to focus in on him, it's like the Skywalker family, Skywalker trilogy, and the Palpatines have a family, and it's all about lineage and the families are fighting each other, as opposed to them just saying it's the Jedi, and like it could be any of them.
But you don't want it to be the Jedi either, to be honest. Like the Jedi are cops. They're just cops. They're space cops. They have too much power. They're garbage by the time Luke comes around. They don't even exist anymore because they got taken down by their own. But like, we don't want to reinstate that.
No, not at all. When it's the idea of untrained people operating in the Force, or when it's the idea of like in Rogue One, where we have the two monks who are, or the one monk and his protector, who are using the Force in a different way, who are relating to the Force in a different way. I think you have this strong thing that's the Force, and we don't have to deal with just Force flips and grab the lightsaber and all that.
I mean, one of the things that I really love about the fact that it's a show about community and how a community becomes radicalized is that you know how like Lin-Manuel Miranda was in an airport and he saw this biography of Hamilton and he was like, oh, I'm gonna read this book because I have a long layover, and then like now we have Hamilton. Tony Gilroy is a studious guy. He was reading this biography of young Stalin and he was like, wow, there's a lot of like rebellion in here. This is kind of amazing. Setting aside the fact that guy would grow up to kill, millions and millions of people and incarcerate 28 million of them in like 20 years. Most of what happens in Andor is taken from young Stalin's life and his own radicalization into Marxism. And the reason why Stalin fails so much, but Andor succeeds, and the reason why Stalin goes on to be like an egotistical mass murderer and Andor does not, is because Andor has a community and Stalin was obsessed with himself. And he would like kill all of the people around him. He trusted no one. And so I think that like Tony Gilroy is trying to tell us something about having the spark, but not letting that spark be too individual in the way that you were talking about Luke Skywalker.
Tell me this. What rating do you give this show?
5 stars. 5 out of 5. I can't help it. And the one thing that I was thinking about in terms of a criticism is there aren't enough non-humans in it. However, I think there's a really good reason for that. And I was thinking about the fact that we only see non-humans in a serious way when we see inside of Saw Gerrera's camp. Saw Gerrera is where all of the non-humans are. And that's really important because the people who are leading other factions of the rebellion, they're just breaking off. They're colonizers who've broken off from the colonizers. So of course they're not going to like enlist non-humans in their cause. They can't do it. They're still racist, even if they're fighting for freedom. So initially I was like, oh, maybe there need to be more aliens in this. And then I was like, nope, Tony Gilroy is a genius. He made it make sense.
Kelly gives it 5 of 5 stars. I give it 4 of 5 stars. I think it is a great show. I do not by any means think it is perfect, but it is. If I were ranking the show, it is the number one. It is the number one Star Wars property, in my opinion, above everything. I think number 2 would be Rogue One, and I think number 3 would be The Mandalorian. Because if you want that silliness mixed with the serious aspect, I think that's why a lot of people who are complaining about Andor, a lot of hardcore Star Wars fans who are complaining about Andor, are probably huge Mandalorian fans because they get a lot of that silliness and the marketable Baby Yoda and all that. But I like that both of these exist. I like that there is possibly a universe in which Andor could interact with Mandalorian in a way that's fruitful for all. Not guaranteed it won't happen in the Andor universe. It'll be characters from Andor showing up on Mandalorian, because there's no way in the world the Mandalorian in that universe is going to play by the rules of Andor. But it's good to know that
nobody in Andor is going to live long enough to be Mandalorian.
Also that, let's not forget that. With that, Kelly, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for letting me bully you into having me.
Absolutely. You can bully me anytime. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Thomas Tyra of Bias Studios mixes the show. Thank you, Tom. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Andor or Kelly Jones, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios and on Twitter at Oh It's Big Ron Stew, STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon, but until then, I'll be here on the couch.